Hi, welcome to another $1 masterclass with me, Clay. This is the third in our series of foundation videos. So we've looked at the major scale, we've looked at the minor scales and the theory. Now we're going to start looking at the chords. This is where it gets really interesting. So we're going to start in the key of C. We're going to stay in the key of C for now. So when we look at a chord, it just literally means a string of notes. So instead of playing one note, we're going to play a collection of notes. So if we look at the key of C, we've got this. Here's our scale. Okay, so we've got 7 notes. We can make 7 chords. We're not going to get into 7th chords at the moment, but we do look at that in some other videos. So here we're going to look at the 7 chords in the key of C, which are C, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished. Okay, so in this video we're just going to look at 3 chords. We're going to look at C major, F major and G major. Okay, so if we take this chord here, this is C major, this is chord 1 in the key of C, obviously. This is chord 4 in the key of C. And this is chord 5. We call these the primary chords, like primary colours. So all 3 are major, and they form the 2 main cadences, which we're going to get into now. So if we take this chord here, okay, that sounds all right. We need a bass note really, so let's put a C down here. Okay, that sounds okay. In the key of C, our most important chord is going to be C, because we're probably going to start and finish on that chord. There we are. So there's quite a big gap between these 2 notes here, this C and this C. I want to make that gap smaller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this G and I'm going to put it down here. Still the same chord. We're still using these same 3 notes. We're using this note twice because it's the most important note. We're playing it down here in the bass. And then we're taking this note and we're putting it down here. And then we'll change our hand shape. So we've got our 3rd finger will play C, our pinky will play E, and our thumb will play G. And then our left hand will play C down here. Now this is working much better because we've got like a gap of a 3rd at the top here, gap of a 4th in the middle, and a gap of a 5th at the bottom. This always works well, having these kind of the intervals or the gaps between the notes getting bigger the lower we go, because the human ear can't really differentiate between the notes if we have them too close together, too low down. So if I take this is a 3rd. If I put this down here, well, it's okay, it sounds a bit muddy. There it's getting quite indistinct, it's getting quite hard to hear what that actually is. That's just a noise, I don't know what that is. So, if I take a 5th, that's fine. That's fine. That's okay, it's getting a bit muddy. Again, don't know what that is. So we'll try and make the shapes bigger the lower we go. The higher we go, we can have them as small as we like. And in fact, we don't want them too big because then they'll sound thin. So if we have like here's a 5th, here's a 5th. We might want to bring that note closer to the C up there. Okay, so what we've done, we've taken our C major chord, chord 1. We've added the C in the bass as well. This is the most important note. And then what we've done is we've taken this G and we put it down here. Makes it sound better, it makes it easier to play, and then it makes it work better when we move to the next chord. So in the key of C, this is our most important chord. Our next most important chord is chord 5, which is G. Here's G. So I'm not going to play it there, I'm going to play it here. So you can see I've gone to this shape here. This is G, B, D. I haven't changed it at all. If the reason I haven't changed it at all is because I'm coming from this shape here. And you can see when I go from the C chord to the G chord, this note is shared between the two chords. So it makes sense to leave that note where it is. If you imagine this was being sung by a choir, we'd have the alto, or the soprano, sorry, the alto, the tenor, and the bass. What we don't want is this. That's using the same root position shape, we call that root position, because the root of the chord stays on the bottom of the chord the whole time. Root position C, root position F, root position G, root position C. Doesn't sound that great, doesn't move nicely. It's not that easy to play because we have to come off the keyboard and jump around, so we've got no kind of reference point for where we were. And if a choir was singing it, well, everybody would be jumping around. But this, if I take this, put it down here, okay. It's much easier to play. If this was being sung by a choir, the tenors, they'd be just going. The altos would be going. Sopranos. Bass, well, they have to jump around. They have to sing the root note most of the time. Okay, so these are the kind of chord patterns that will occur most often in songs. So chord 1 to chord 5, or chord 5 to chord 1. Chord 5 to chord 1, this is called a cadence. So it's like, people describe it as musical punctuation. So we've got like a verse or a chorus or something like that. Then it will probably finish with some kind of cadence. And the two most important cadences are this one. That's the perfect cadence, chord 5 to chord 1. Here's chord 5. Chord 5 in the key of C. G to chord 1. Okay, that's the perfect cadence. Now that might happen at the end of the chorus, it might happen in the middle of the chorus. It'll kind of break up the phrases. Okay, that's our perfect cadence. Now we're going to introduce a third chord, the third of our primary chords. This is chord 4. We don't order them in terms of primary chord 1, primary chord 2, primary chord 3, so don't worry about that. I'm calling this the third one because it's the third one that we're looking at. So they're all primary chords. This one, and this one. Okay, so we've looked at this one, and we've looked at this one, and we haven't looked at this one yet. So now we're going to do that. So I'm going to keep my same shape for my C chord here. Now I would call this root position. If I take the C and I put it at the top, I'm going to call that first inversion, second inversion. Bass, I'll put the bass down here. We're not including that. We're talking about this chord here. If we play it up here, root position, first inversion, second inversion, we're back to root position again. Bass, that bass is just doing the bass. It's separate. Okay, so left hand is just going to do the bass, right hand's just going to do the chord at the moment. Okay, so I'm sticking to this second inversion C shape because this is chord 1 and it's the most important chord in the key of C. So I've done my C to G and back. When I come back, that's giving me my perfect cadence, which you'll have heard loads of times. Okay. Now we're going to look at the Plagal Cadence. Some people call it the A main cadence, because it sounds like a bit like you get it a lot in hymns. So this is chord 4 to chord 1. So if I'm going to go to my F chord from here, in my F chord, if I put my F chord in root position here like this, there it is. Piano needs a tune, sorry about that. We can see it's got F and an A and a C. Okay, so this note, well, this note is in the chord of C as well, isn't it? So we're going to keep this note, and we're going to keep it in this middle part here. So when we go to our F chord, we're going to go, my bass can go up to F or down to F. Let's put it down to F. You'll hear it sounds more hymn-like if I do it here. Amen. So, I'm using my nice, well-distributed C shape here. I'm going to go down to F. And you can see I've basically kept this, I've literally used my third finger as a pivot. And I'm going to move my little finger and my thumb up to the other two chords of the two notes of the F chord, A and F. So basically I've taken my F chord, I've moved the F up to the top. This is first inversion. There's my Plagal Cadence. So why are we looking at these? What's the importance of these? If we might not be interested in theory, we might not care about cadences, what they're called or anything like that. That's the kind of thing we need to know for our grade 5 theory or something like that. So we don't necessarily need to focus on the theory, but we do need to focus on the shapes, because these shapes crop up all the time in pop songs, classic pop songs, classical pieces. It doesn't matter what it is. Happy Birthday, we can play Happy Birthday with these three shapes, these three primary chords, which form the two cadences, the perfect cadence, 5-1, and the Plagal Cadence, 4-1. If we train our subconscious to memorize these shapes, and if we can use the same fingers each time, sometimes we can't use the same fingers depending on the key. But if I move this up to, let's say I move this up to G. Okay, I'm going to do this in G. I'm using the same shapes, I'm using the same fingers, so there's a slight difference here because we've got this F sharp, so the gap is, the movement is slightly different, but hopefully the subconscious will deal with that. So if we're doing Happy Birthday, here, a lot of people can't, unless they've got a good voice, they'll find that either too low or too high. So we can just move it up to here, and we can do it there. So we can use this shape as a pattern, as a warm-up. We can use it as a warm-up. We can use it to play a ton of tunes. So we can learn it as a 3-chord pattern. So we basically go, the cadence, the perfect cadence and the Plagal Cadence are chord 5 to chord 1. If we go from chord 1 to chord 5, that's not a perfect cadence. There are other cadences like interrupted cadence and things like that. We don't need to get into that. So let's look at the whole exercise now. So we're starting with our C. We're going to go to G, back to C, then to F, then back to C. We can just keep going around that. And when we get notes that kind of move smoothly to, like, if you imagine this is being sung by a choir, they've each got their own part. So we can hear, let me highlight the soprano. Now I'm going to highlight the alto. tenor. You already start to hear loads of songs that are using these. Hallelujah is a classic example. In the next foundation video, we will look at a fourth chord, which then opens up a whole load of possibilities of songs that we can play. But we'll use the same kind of method of using these shapes, because we can get these shapes. The subconscious loves shapes. It loves it's like patter cake or something like that, that kind of thing. We can take a very complex harmonic structure, a sequence of chords, but if we just look at it as shapes, the subconscious will go, oh, okay, I like that. It's shapes. The subconscious isn't interested in theory. It's not interested in harmony. It likes shapes and repetitive actions, and it can throw these back at us really, really quickly, much more quickly than if we're trying to think, okay, well, what is this chord, and where am I putting the major third? If we don't think about any of that, we can think about that in a different mode, if you like, when we want to focus on the theory and things like that. But to build fluency, we want to give it to the subconscious. The subconscious does things much more quickly than our conscious brain, because it doesn't have to think of the finer points. It's just like, okay, well, here it is. F, E flat, D, C sharp, B, B flat. I'm not having to think about anything. I'm just thinking about the shapes, and my subconscious is giving me these shapes. So I hope that's useful. This kind of approach to shapes informs most of the kind of chordal tutorials that I do. In here we've covered the theory and the kind of shapes, but generally we'll do like shapes first, and then if you're interested in the theory, there'll be a part 2 tutorial where you can dig into that and the harmony. And if you're not interested, that's fine. You don't. If you want to just work by shape and by ear and by looking at the keyboard, well, that's fine. Loads of great players have done that. Okay, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next foundation tutorial, where we look at a 4-chord sequence. Just to recap, we've looked at the 2 main cadences. We've looked at 3 chords, 3 primary chords, and we've looked at how those 3 chords make the 2 main cadences, from 5 to 1 and 4 to 1, and then combining those into a shape exercise. See you next time. Thanks for watching.